Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Dennis Allen has made his decision for a defensive coordinator, and it's not to hire a defensive coordinator. It's to hire defensive coordinators. We got the first word from Adam Rittenberg on Twitter earlier today. Sources. A New Orleans Saints assistant head coach and defensive line coach, Ryan Nielsen, has been promoted to co-defensive coordinator under new coach Dennis Allen. Deal is done. Nielsen had multiple opportunities to be a college DC, but gets his chance in the NFL. So Rittenberg tweeted that earlier today at 1:19 p.m. And then at 1:30, 11 minutes later, he tweeted, defensive backs coach Kris Richard, also elevated to co-defensive coordinator, per source. Richard is the former Seahawks DC under Pete Carroll. So, there you have it. The Saints have co-defensive coordinators under Dennis Allen. There is one thing about this that makes me a little nervous. This is the only co-coordinator circumstance in the entire NFL. Not just on the defensive side of the ball, on either side of the ball. There is no team in the NFL that has a co-coordinator situation anywhere else. And maybe you could argue that just because maybe they're a trendsetter, maybe circumstantially it works, but typically the NFL is a copycat league, and if other teams are doing it and it's successful, some will follow. The fact that no one else is doing this is a bit concerning. But there's one reason in particular why I'll say I'm good with this. I'll get into each guy here in just a moment. But when Dennis Allen was hired, you remember this, when Dennis Allen was hired, he was asked specifically about defensive play calling and if he would continue in that role. And this is what Dennis Allen said when he was hired.
That's stuff that we're going to determine over the next few days. But yet, I was telling somebody before, it's hard to turn your baby over. You know what I mean? And so I see myself, still, being heavily involved there and heavily involved with the game plan and even potentially the play calling.
So, if Dennis Allen is going to keep doing the things he was doing last year and has been doing since he returned to New Orleans and replaced Rob Ryan in 2015, then does it really matter who your defensive coordinator or co-defensive coordinator is? In some respects, it's almost like what's happening in New England, where Bill Belichick is listed as the defensive coordinator. Now, Matt Patricia was in that role before. They've had other guys in that role before. But, if your head coach is the guy who's in charge of defensive game planning and calling the defense on game day, does it really matter? For these guys, in name, in title, certainly it matters to have that distinction next to your name. It's an elevation. It's a promotion. No doubt it'll come with a raise and also an opportunity to jump from there. And both have had opportunities. Look, Kris Richard was the defensive coordinator in Seattle and then went to Dallas and didn't have nearly the success and obviously was available and the Saints scooped him up. But a guy who had great success there, coaching the Legion of Boom in Seattle. So he's got experience doing it. Ryan Nielsen has not been a defensive coordinator yet, but boy, he's had opportunities. He's been considered for those opportunities. Just this offseason, Richard interviewed with the Ravens, Colts, and Steelers. Last year, Nielsen interviewed with the Packers, and remember, Ed Orgeron was going to hire him. Now, Ed Orgeron screwed up the whole thing by not checking with Sean Payton first, and then it got real petty, and if you remember how all that went, because there was a lot of smoke out there that it was done, that Nielsen was going to be, and I'll tell you, he had verbally agreed to be the defensive coordinator. But Ed Orgeron didn't follow the right protocols, pissed off Sean Payton, and so Sean Payton blocked the move because Nielsen was under contract. So they gave him the title associate head coach, and they gave him a big raise and all that stuff, and so he stayed. But the point being, Nielsen has had those opportunities. He's been pursued before. So now he gets to put that title next to his name, and that probably gives him a better opportunity for advancement, for promotion, to be a head coach at some point, provided they still continue to do well. So the most interesting part about this, as I was thinking about it earlier today, is that it took a roundabout path, or maybe just a lot of spins on the carousel. But when the carousel stopped, it stopped exactly where we thought it was going to, didn't it? I mean, when Sean Payton resigned, didn't we all say? I mean, wasn't it just basically everybody in football? It was sort of the consensus that Dennis Allen was the most likely choice. Hell, even Sean Payton said it in his press conference. Like, well, there's a really good candidate in-house, standing right over there. I mean, it was sort of understood. Now, they went through the whole process. They interviewed outside candidates, then in-house candidates, and ultimately hired Dennis Allen, the guy who kind of was the odds-on favorite all along. And then with offensive coordinator, well, it wasn't going to be Pete Carmichael, and then they went and interviewed a whole bunch of candidates and landed on Pete Carmichael, the guy who we thought initially was going to be the guy anyway. And now with DC, they went and interviewed a lot of different guys outside, interviewed the in-house guys last, and ultimately landed on the guys that we thought it was going to be, Nielsen or Richard, or in this instance, both. And so that does speak to the other thing Dennis Allen talked about when he was hired, and it was kind of the reason that most people that were okay with this hire were okay with the hire, and that was when Dennis Allen said this, that basically you didn't need to change a whole bunch.
I think there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, and I just would say, look, we got a talented staff. And you know, I like a lot of the things that we've done.
So there was more, and what he said was, look, we've got a talented staff, and the culture's in place, and you don't really need to change a whole bunch, and that was pretty obvious. One of the key underlying themes or theses from Gail Benson and Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton on his way out and Dennis Allen on his way in was this. Was that you spent 15 years building a great organization, an organization that's won more games than any over the last 5 years other than Kansas City. You got to figure out some personnel things. Quarterback, you need to obviously add receiver depth. You had to purge the roster last year because you got into a bind with the cap and the salary cap going down because of COVID. But you did that, and now figure out your quarterback situation. If it's Jameis, you're going a different direction, add some more weapons offensively, and you should be competing again. Right back where you were. Because you didn't have this massive turnover. And that was the idea behind all of this, is keeping all of this structure in place. Now, specifically with the defense, I'm okay with this, especially if Dennis Allen is retaining the role that he is. Yes, you wonder about infighting and the sort of power struggle, that tug of war with Dennis Allen, who's the head coach, who's been the DC. Richard's been the DC, now is again, but a co-DC, sharing with a guy who's a first-time DC. But these guys have all been on staff together in the past, so how well do they work together? I would assume pretty well. Otherwise, I don't think Dennis Allen would have made this decision to promote these two guys if they didn't all work together. So you would hope that's certainly the case. But what's really clear defensively is you got great talent on the defensive side of the ball. You got great coaches on the defensive side of the ball. Just don't screw it up. Don't screw up what's been working so well. The real gigantic question for this team and this franchise moving forward is, can you solve the quarterback equation? Can you solve the quarterback equation? Is it Jameis? Is it someone else? Figure that out, and then you let the rest of the dominoes fall into place. Defense was elite last year. Your offense was dead last in the NFL in passing. You got to fix that. So Kris Richard, Ryan Nielsen, co-DCs under Dennis Allen. It will be certainly fascinating to watch how this organization continues to put itself together and to reinvent itself by not changing much in the post-Peyton Breeze era. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.